Hello everyone, I am Surbhi Mishra and today I'm going to discuss about how a culture affects a communication. So basically we'll be talking about what is the role of culture in business communication. So let's start with the topic. So, as we are going to discuss about how cultural is going to affect a business communication or what effects does culture have on business communication. The first, we'll understand what is the meaning of the term culture. So, culture is a certain belief or our tradition which individual receives from its family, from its home, from its roots, or we can say from their parents. So culture is the characteristics and knowledge of particular group of people defined by everything from language, religion, cuisine, social habits, music, arts. As the countries grow, so does its cultural diversity. So we can say that culture consists of everything from your language, your religion, your cuisine. Cuisine here are the food, the delicacies which we uh, have in our own culture, social habits, music, art. As the country grows, so the cultural diversity also grows, right? So it can also define as the appreciation of arts and human intellectual achievement. So basically, when we talk about culture, we can say in simple words that it's a certain belief in terms of language, religion, food, eating habits, uh, our dressing sense, our music, dance, everything includes the cultural heritage. So let's come to the example. We'll see what are the examples of culture. So when we talk about examples, first, we'll take the example of Indian culture. Like in Indian culture, what happened? Like Indian culture is the very vast culture, and it is spread in almost everywhere, and every people in the world knows about Indian culture. It has the greatest and the very rich heritage. Right. So when we talk about Indian culture, there are very important festivals which are celebrated by different religions. Like when we talk about Hindus, they celebrate Diwali, Holi, and Makar Sankranti. When we talk about Islam, they observe Eid. When we talk about Sikh festival, the Baisakhi is being observed during the time of crop harvesting. So when we talk about Jains, they basically celebrate their very big festival is Mahavir Jayanti, and we talk about Buddhists, they talk for Buddha's birthday. And when we talk about Christians, they go for Christmas and Good Friday. So these are the different religions. We can say it's a diversified culture. It's a very rich heritage. So people are of their different religions. There are castes, there are different subcastes. So it's a very rich culture. So it includes festivals of different food delicacies and everything. And in comparison, when we talk, we're not exactly talking about the comparison. When we talk about other culture, we have, I would like to mention the culture of Japan. Japan is a leader in technology. So Japan, as we all know, that Japan is leading in the technologies. So Japan is a leader in technology, robotics, automotive industries. And when we talk about companies like Sony, Toyota, Nintendo, so these are the major companies which are technology driven and which are very updated. And these are the names coming from Japan only. Now, everywhere in Japan, people go to show respect to their elders. If somebody is very uh, special or there is some very senior person, so they bow more down just to show huge respect to that particular person. So respect is the highly practiced in Japan. So in India also, elder peoples are respected. We give respect to each and everyone. The elder ones also, the younger ones also. And the tradition of India is that people want to uh, grow in joint families as compared to Western culture. So this states the example of culture. We can also say culture is a values. Culture also includes the values which we inherit from our family, from our parents. So, like as we have seen that Mr. Narendra Modi has shown the cultural example in the meetings when he meet the foreign delegates in a meeting. He said that we Indians do namaste as a greeting instead of shaking hands because it was the duration of pandemic, and there the guidelines were running for stay safe, stay home, and also they were, if you people are in social groups, so you have to maintain the social distancing. So by maintaining the social distancing, he also gave the example of how to show the culture and how to greet business delegates in meetings. So that was also that can also be considered as an example of communicating by reflecting it in our own culture, Indian culture, right? So we'll be moving ahead. We'll be discussing about the characteristics of culture. Like what are the characteristics of culture? When we talk about characteristics, we'll be looking that culture is learned, it is social, it is shared, it is transmitted, and is a continuous journey. So first we'll discuss these characteristics, then we'll move on to the other characteristics of culture. So when we talk about when we talk about culture is learned. So culture is not inherited. Culture is not inherited biologically, but it is learned socially by man in society. As I told, culture we get the values, the beliefs from our family, from our parents by learning it at our home. Suppose if there is a kid in a family, and if we do not tell him or her to respect their elders, to obey their elders, will that a kid do? No. So we can say that culture is learned. We learn it from our family, from our society. So next is culture is social also. When we say culture is social, so it is an individual phenomena, but it is the product of society. It develops in the society through serial interaction. Here, culture is social. We say when we say culture is social, when we interact with people, and it is totally we can say an individual cannot do it alone. So it is not an individual phenomenon, but it's a uh, collaborative concept. We can say without interacting, we cannot learn the socialized way how to interact. What are the elements of social culture? So it develops by interacting within the society through serial interactions, right? Moving to the next point, culture is shared. When we say culture is shared, so something is shared. It is nothing that common people, that it is nothing but shared by common people of a territory. So we share culture. If suppose we used to like every day is a learning for us. We used to learn every day everything from our surroundings. So that is why it is shared. It is said that culture is shared. So culture is something which is shared, right? The other thing we can say is culture is transmitted. How we can say culture is transmitted? Here, transmission means transferring from one generation to other generation. So that's why we can say culture is transmitted. If what we have learned, that has been given to us from our parents. So, and that same thing we'll be doing to our kids, to our next generation. So, this is something which is transmitted from one generation to other generation. And the other point is also related to this one, as it is transmitted. So, it also considered to be a continuous process. We can say culture is a continuous process. It will be passed on to other generations and generations. So we must take care of what sort of beliefs, what sort of values we are passing to our next generation, because this is something from which we are identified. We have an identity from our culture only, right? Moving to the next point, culture is accumulative. When we say culture is accumulative, culture is not a matter, a month is not a matter of a month, a year, or a day, right? It is a continuous process on adding new cultural traits. When the things are like when we were toddlers, we came to know some basic values, and the moment we start growing, the values also got added. It was not deleted. It gets started added to your basic values. So the culture is accumulative. How? Because as you grow, your values, your cultures also gets add-on traits, right? So that's why it is mentioned that culture is accumulative in nature. The culture is integrated. Yes, it is integrated as all the cultural aspects are combined with each other. If there will be a love in the family, there will be trust. If there will be trust, if there will be love and trust, you people will, like every people in the family member will respect each other. So somewhere culture is integrated. It is a combination of all the aspects of cultural values, right? So when we talk about next characteristics of culture, that culture is changing also. It remains changing but not static. Culture process undergoes changes. Yes, it do undergoes changes. Like as the time is also changing, the time is also changing. So the process also undergoes the changes. But yes, we cannot forget the basic elements of the culture. The language will be the same, right? The attire will be the same. We have to change according to the time. But the basic values like respect to your elders, love to your younger and elder ones, everything, all these elements have to be same. We cannot compromise on these basic elements, because if we do that, then we won't be able to uh, make our identity in form of a good person, or we can say ethical person. Because if you are living in a society, you have to follow some sort of professional code of conduct if we are in organization, and if we are not in an organization, then we also have to follow the social code of conduct, right? So the only things which are acceptable in the society, in the organization, we have to carry that only, right? Next is culture. Culture varies from society to society. Here means that if we are into a Indian society, the culture will be different. If we are into the American society, the culture will be different. So every society has its own culture and ways of behavior. So it is not uniform everywhere, but occurs differently in various societies, right? As I told you, that in Japan, uh, there is people are living into traditional families also. They live in big joint families, but it doesn't happen in everywhere. Like in India also, it happens that people living with their ancestors, and they do live in the joint families, but it doesn't happens in other country, like in, if we talk about America. So nuclear families are more in trend over there. So the culture differs according to the society, and the behavior also differs. We'll be studying more about the different cultures of different nations, and what is the difference between the Western culture and the Eastern culture. So we'll be discussing more in the further slides, right? So the last characteristic over here is linked with society. Society is a composite of people, and they interact through each other. It binds the people within the society. linked with the society as it's a social process. So we cannot communicate alone. We need somebody to communicate, right? So there, as we have already discussed till now, that communication is a two-way process. When we say it's a two-way process, that means we need somebody to talk. So that's why it is said it is linked with the society because it binds people together. The friendships, if we are talking about the affection, the friendship, the family, the relationship, so all these things are based on communication. If there will be no communication, no exchange of information, no exchange of thought, there will be no link. There will be no bond. So people will not be binded with the relationship. They will not be sharing the good bond. So that's why it is said that the communication, that the culture is linked with society, linked the society. Right? So we'll moving towards the next slide. Now, as we have discussed the characteristics, so we'll be now discuss what are the elements of culture. When we talk about the elements, like what constitutes a culture. Culture is combination of what all things we'll be discussing in this particular thing, which is known as elements of culture, right? So it includes language, values and attitude, religion, education, social institution, music, tools and objects, ways of working, ideas about good and bad, or we can say the perception, material elements. So all these elements, when combined, constitute a thing known as culture. So we can also say these are the key components of culture or the elements of culture, or all these things can, when combined together, creates a culture. So we'll be studying more about it in detail. So language, the system of communication used by a particular community or country. As it is mentioned, that language is something we use to convey our thoughts, to convey our message, to convey our opinions, right? So it includes, it can include language, can be used in speaking, it can be used in writing, and sometimes it can also be used in a sign language, right? And is primary means of transmitting culture from one generation to next. Because if we are not having any mode of communication without language, we cannot speak. And if we talk about language, it includes everything, the speaking words, the writing words, and also the sign languages, right? The next one is, when we talk about next one, the next one is value and attitude. The principle and beliefs, here value and attitude, we'll be discussing one element at a time. The principle and beliefs that influence the behavior and decision-making process of an individual within a society. Right, that is the attitude. And when we talk about value, value is defined as what is considered important, with while attitudes are the predispositions to respond in a certain way based on those values, right? Value is something what is important, what is right. And when we talk about attitude, so the way we respond or the way we react to a particular situation is termed as attitude, right? Suppose when we talk about a scenario, like some people are going on a street, and there you see there is a crowd of people, and they are just shouting like what is happening over there. And the two people are passing nearby, and one that two friends between among those two, one thinks the one's attitude is let's go and create a video and do it viral, that this particular thing is taking place. This is the like current news going through. So this is the attitude of that particular person, right? He's not focusing what is important at that point of time. His mindset is that the importance is of creating a video and making it viral on the social media. but the other guy is thinking, the other person is thinking, let's go and find out what happened. Is anybody in trouble or some accident has taken place or somebody needs help? Let's go and find it out. So that is his way of responding to a particular situation. So these two people are friends, but having different attitudes and different values towards a particular situation, right? So this explains the value and attitude. Coming to the religion part, when we talk about the religion as an element of culture, it is a set of spiritual beliefs, practice, and moral codes followed by a group of people. Religion often provides a framework for understanding the world, guides behavior, and creates a sense of community. So, religion here means there is a specific set of beliefs, practices, and moral code followed by a group of people, right? So religion, every religion has different set of beliefs. Islams have different, Hindus have different. Same goes with Christianity and Sikhs, right? So every religion has a different framework. Coming to the next point is education. The process of imparting education is what? The process of imparting knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes by using the mode of teaching, training, and learning. So education can be formal and informal. The very first education which we get is from our family, from our parents. So the first mode of education is our family, our parents. And then we go to the formal education mode, which are schools, colleges, or higher education universities, right? So moving to the next slide. Social institutions, the organized structure and mechanism of social order and cooperation that govern the behavior of individuals within a community. Examples include social institution is what? Social institution is again the where there is a group of members or the group of people to whom we interact. It includes family, it includes government officials, the legal system of our country, and the religious organizations, right? So all these are social institutions, and this acts as an organization structure and mechanism for cooperation within a community, right? The next element is music. Yes, as we discussed, culture also includes the music, the cuisine. So we'll be here talking about the music, the form of art, the cultural activities that uses. For example, in India, the classical music is the root, right? And when we talk about the Japan, the pop music, the pop culture is the trend over there. So everywhere, music and art forms, music, all these also constitute as a cultural heritage, or we can say the part of a culture, right? Music is universal aspect of culture that express emotions, tell stories, and bring people all together. And by listening to music, people can also burst out their stress levels, right? It can act as a therapy for people to relax, right? Next is tools and objects. When we talk about tools and objects, the physical item created and used by a society is known as tools. These includes everyday objects, technology, and artifacts that facilitates daily life and reflect cultural advancements. So, the physical items created and used by a society, these includes everyday objects, technology. We are talking about like technology, or we are talking about the gadgets, the objects which we use uh, at offices or in our homes for our daily routine, in our daily routine or for our daily working, right? So these also includes in we can say the cultural elements, right? The next is way of working. The methods and process by which people produce goods and services is also known as way of working, is also different according to the culture. So this includes traditional practice, technological advancement, and organizational structure within organization, right? When we talk about way of working, so way of working might be different in different countries. It cannot be same. Like in most of the country, like when we talk about in most of the country, the hybrid mode of working is allowed. But in few countries, in few states, it is not available. So way of working is different according to the different workplace ethics. So it is based on basically the different professional code of conduct and like different workplace ethics, right? So all these are the elements of a culture. The next is the ideas about good and bad. The moral and ethical beliefs that define what is considered to be right and what is considered to be wrong in a culture. So these ideas guide behavior, influence laws, and shape social norms. For example, if we are sitting into an Indian family, so the slangs which are used by the students or by the kids or by the children of the family or some abusive words are not at all allowed and entertained in the family. But it might possible that when we talk about slangs or some other sort of words in different culture, it might be acceptable in their society, right? So, but these are different mindset. It also affects the different mindset of a different culture people. So these guides behavior, influence laws, and shape social norms. Now I'll be talking about material element. The physical evidence of a culture in the objects is known as material element. For example, the architecture. These includes the building, the artwork, clothing, tools, and other tangible items that are part of daily life and heritage. So material element is the very important element of a culture, right? It includes the tangible. Tangible item here means tangible items are those items which we can see, which we can touch, right? So if they are talking about the architecture, Statue of Liberty, right? India Gate, Red Fort. So all these things are archaeological heritage which we are talking about. So it is materialistic and talking about the physical evidence that yes, this particular culture in this country, this culture was having this heritage. So these are the material elements of culture. So all these elements, when collectively contribute to the they represent the identity and functioning of a culture of a particular country, state, city, or we can say the geographical location where people is living, interacting, right? So this explains the characteristics and elements of a culture. We will be moving ahead. Now we will be discussing how culture affects on communication. So let's see. As we were talking, what was the like? What are the elements of the culture? What are the characteristics of the culture? How culture is, how one culture of a country is different from the other culture. So here we'll be discussing more on the part of communication, that how communication gets affected from the culture, right? So culture directly affects business communication in two ways, in verbal and in non-verbal ways. As the when we talk about the verbal ways, so as we have discussed, verbal includes oral, written, and visual and audiovisual communication. But non-verbal includes the kinesics, the proxemics, the body language, facial expressions, the haptics, everything into that. So we'll be discussing more about it, right? So the next point is some culture including here, it is mentioned that in Australia, the United Kingdoms and Germany place high significance to words actually spoken. Right? They focus more on spoken words. Which country? Australia, United Kingdom, and Germany focuses more significance towards spoken words as compared to other countries, right? So other culture including here is Japan and Arab culture. In Japan and Arab culture, still place significance on the context of conversation. So where are you silent? Like where are you taking pause? So that explains the relevance, that explains the importance of the conversation when we talk about Japan and Arabic culture, right? Silence carries a significance in all culture. Here, if we are not saying that in only Japan and Arab culture, only silence plays the significance, but silence sometimes means either you're not interested to conversate further, or um, you have accepted everything. So silence carries different meanings. It depends on the type of conversation, right? So as it is mentioned, silence carries significance in all cultures, and this might be interpreted in different ways during cross-cultural business meetings as well, right? So moving ahead, here you can see one gesture, different interpretation. In this particular image, you can find it out. You can find it out that how and cross-cultural communication is affecting. If we are seeing the symbol of OK in UK and US, and we can say in India also. In India, it has different meaning. In UK and US, it is considered as okay. In Japan, it is considered as money. In Russia, it is considered as zero. But in Brazil, it is taken as insult. So here you can see one symbol is depicting four different meanings in four different nations, right? So what we can interpret from this, that yes, different gestures or different signs or different words have different interpretations in different nations. So it is basically based on what? The cultural language of that particular nation, right? We'll be moving towards the next slide. Now here we will be discussing we'll be discussing the cultural values between Western culture and Eastern culture, right?